Coming up on Newswatch in Focus, an odorless and potentially deadly gas could be creeping into your home. What should you do to stay safe from carbon monoxide? We'll talk to the Charleston Fire Department in our studios next. Stay tuned. Newswatch in Focus starts right now. Welcome and thanks for joining us for Newswatch in Focus. I'm your host, Kate Pleasant. Our topic this week is carbon monoxide. According to the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, carbon monoxide poisoning is a leading cause of unintentional poisoning deaths in the United States. Carbon monoxide is odorless, colorless, and usually remains undetectable until exposure results in injury or death. The CDC says non-fire-related carbon monoxide poisoning is responsible for around 15,000 emergency department visits and nearly 500 deaths annually in the United States. Among over 68,000 carbon monoxide exposures reported to poison centers between 2000 and 2009, nearly half were managed at the site with exposure with instructions from the poison center by telephone. Around 54% were treated at a healthcare facility, and the management site for the remainder was unknown. Most of those exposures occurred at a home and most often involve females and children under 17 and adults aged 18 to 44. The CDC says many of these exposures are preventable with awareness and detectors in the home. Locally, there have been several unconfirmed reports of carbon monoxide detectors going off in homes. We'll talk to the Charleston Fire Department here in a little bit about that when they join us in the studio. But first, here's a little more on that story from WEIU Newswatch.
Fire officials are warning you to check your carbon monoxide detectors regularly. Mattoon Assistant Fire Chief Sean Youngie says residents should replace the batteries in their carbon monoxide detectors when they change their smoke alarms batteries, which should be every 6 months. Charleston resident Linda Gates says since her detector has gone off multiple times this week, she's worried about her family's well-being.
I have had the fire department here 4 times in a 3-day period. My youngest son and his friends like to hang downstairs and sleep downstairs, and that's a part of their life that they can no longer do at this point in time.
You can't see it, if you can't taste it, if you can't touch it, then there could be some serious consequences if you don't have an alarm in there to warn you that there's a problem going on.
We have heard of unconfirmed reports of other carbon monoxide detectors going off in Charleston. Again, these reports are unconfirmed. Along with changing batteries, Youngie says to check your detectors once a month for proper levels. And it's not carbon monoxide detectors they're checking on, but smoke and fire alarms. If you're a college student, listen up. The Illinois State Fire Marshal is urging college students to check their smoke alarms and fire detectors. Governor Pat Quinn is calling September Campus Fire Safety Month. Last month, Quinn signed a law requiring fire sprinkler protection in dorms on all college campuses by 2014.
Wonder where we get our story inspirations from? Make sure to tune in to Newswatch every weeknight at 5:30 right here on WEIU to find out. Newswatch in Focus takes a local story from the week that was featured on Newswatch and goes more in depth. For more local news, weather, and sports, tune in to Newswatch every weeknight at 5:30. We're back now with Pat Goodwin, the Chief of the Charleston Fire Department. Thank you for joining me today,
You're
Pat.
welcome.
And we're of course talking about carbon monoxide. And you were telling me earlier about kind of the interesting history behind carbon monoxide. Do you want to share that with us?
CO has been around, carbon monoxide has been around since the pioneer days when we had the fireplaces. That's the only source of heat. We've been exposed to it forever. Just recently, over the last really 5 to 10 years, we've become more energy efficient. There's grants, people are putting in all the newer homes, the new windows, and more insulation. We're trying to encapsulate our houses to be the most efficient we can, but yet we're not having that air exchange that we had for years ago. In the old log cabins, we had a lot of air infiltration.
Right between
now
them.
we're trying to seal them up as tight as we can. So now any leak or any exposure to carbon monoxide is encapsulated and we're being exposed to it more. So it's become more of a hazard now than ever before. It's always been there, but just now we're becoming aware and it's becoming an issue.
So now it's more of the conscious effort.
Yes.
And when did this kind of conscious effort with, the detectors, the meters, and all of that come about?
It's been for really the last 8 to 10 years. Then it finally became law about 5 years ago. Smoke detectors have been a law that you had to have a working smoke detector. And now you have to have a working smoke detector and a carbon monoxide detector in homes.
Okay, and do you just have to have one carbon monoxide detector in
You
your
have to
house?
have one on each level of the home
Okay,
and within 15 feet of any sleeping room for CO and smoke detectors.
okay. And what's the ideal placement on both?
Hallways, in the basements, there's always usually the heating appliances for the furnace and the water heater, and that is in the basement. So in the basement, hallways in between a lot of the sleeping rooms. If you have sleeping rooms in both ends of the house, remember 15 feet from a sleeping room. So you may have to have 2 on one floor. It all depends on the layout of the home.
Okay, but always a good idea to have one, of course, where you're sleeping.
It's always better. I'd rather have too many than not enough.
Right, okay. And there are differences between, there's detectors and there are meters, right, that you can purchase?
There's still detectors, but there are detectors that are battery operated. There's detectors that actually plug into the wall that will give you a digital readout of how
Okay.
much CO, if there is CO in the house.
Okay, and
There's still detectors, they still will alarm.
Okay, and what are the normal kind of acceptable levels, I guess I would say, of carbon monoxide in the home?
Detectors are really not supposed to activate below 30 parts per million of carbon monoxide. Anywhere from 0 to 5 parts per million is normal in a house.
Okay,
If it's Thanksgiving Day and you're doing a lot of cooking, your CO is going to be higher. It may get up to 20. These are all acceptable limits. You can be exposed up to 25 to 30 parts per million for days. And once you got to be over that 30 parts per million for a longer exposure before you really have issues.
okay. And what are the primary sources? I know you talked about furnaces and things, but gas appliances are one, is that correct?
Gas appliances. And going back to the laws, if you have any gas appliance in the residence or an attached garage, you have to have a CO. So you may have an all-electric home, but you still park your car in the garage, you still have to have a CO detector. But if you do, that's the only stipulation, that if you're an all-electric home and you do not have a garage, you do not have to have a CO detector.
Really? Okay.
But there's very few that do not have a gas stove, water heater, the furnace, or a garage. So pretty much every residence is going to have a CO detector.
And it'd probably be a good idea, even if you don't have to have one, to get one anyway, right?
It's a cheap sense of security. I mean, for a few dollars, and for needy families, we hand out smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors to needy people. We'll install them. Every year we get a grant for batteries. We'll give you replacement batteries if you can't replace them. So we're there to promote safety. There's avenues there to get these detectors, and we want the public to be so safe, and that's the best thing, because they are smoke detectors. You can get them for $5 or $6 to protect your life and your family. It's worth $5 or $6.
Cheap sense of insurance
It
there.
is.
So, and what about carbon monoxide calls in this area? Do we have any kind of, amount of those in a year, or?
We get, say in 2011, we had 27 calls that we found CO at the residence.
And that was higher than that 30 parts?
And they went higher than the 30. The alarms were activated, and we found CO. We had 12 alarms were activated just from either batteries, faulty sensors. I mean, it's just like a smoke detector. You need to check them monthly, change the batteries, and there's this lifespan. There's CO detectors, smoke detectors don't last forever. So every 4 or 5 years, whatever the manufacturer recommendation is, to swap them out.
Okay.
But yeah, they keep going up. In 2009, we had 13 calls that found CO, and last year we're up to 27. So I don't know if it's more that there's more alarms out there detecting the CO, or if we are having an increase in CO releases. But
Well, you said, the more energy efficient, that can be part of that. So
Yep.
maybe as the years go on, we're getting better at that.
But this just shows that the detectors are working.
Okay.
I mean, we had a death about 3 years ago. There was a death from carbon monoxide. We've had some illnesses, but only the one death, and our goal is not to have any deaths at all. And we try to say, we'll give CO detectors away if somebody cannot afford one. We'll give you that detector for your safety.
Okay. And so if someone were to, how would you know that you're being affected by CO?
A lot of times, especially this time of year, the signs of CO poisoning are similar to the flu.
Oh, okay.
You're dizzy, you're nauseated, you're weak. Just all those signs, symptoms, you may think, well, I'm coming down with the flu, when actually it could be CO poisoning. And it could be a slow onset. because if it's only 30 to 40, 50 parts per million, it may take 4 or 5 days exposure to get these symptoms. So you may think that's, well, the whole family's getting the flu, when actually it could be a CO poisoning issue.
Okay, so flu-like symptoms. And if you suspect, or if you're in doubt, should you call the fire department anyway?
In doubt. If your alarm is beeping or alarming, or the whole family's just not feeling right and you're concerned, give us a holler. We will be more than happy to come out with our monitors and test for CO. CO is kind of transient in nature. I mean, it may be there when the water heater kicks on. It may be there that your house is so tight that it's only on when you turn the exhaust fan on the bathroom. And it's got to pull air from somewhere, and through the flue may be the only place. So it may be just of a morning an issue. But yeah, if there's any doubt at all, call us. We'll come monitor the whole house anytime to ensure your safety.
So what is the procedure when you get a call of someone complaining about possible carbon monoxide poisoning? What's the procedure like?
911 is supposed to get some information whether they are feeling ill, if there's any life-threatening injury or illnesses from it, and if they're really short of breath or whatever. If we get a call and there is people that are feeling sick, we'll respond to an ambulance and an engine. If it's just their alarm's going off, we'll send an engine. We have a 4-gas meter that's calibrated that we can go in and it detects 4 different gases, and we'll be able to go through the house and check and see if there's any CO or gas in the house.
Okay, so you would go in and meter, and then, so say someone knows that they're sick and they call 911, is there something they can do in the interim to help themselves?
The best thing we can say to do is to go ahead and evacuate the house.
Okay.
You don't have to so much open it up and leave it open, because when you get there then, we're going to find 0 gas. So the best thing to do is to exit, go to the neighbors, go in your car. If it's nice weather, enough weather, just stay outside until we get there, that we can actually get the monitors, and we'll start monitoring from the outside into the front door and throughout the whole residence.
Okay. And so who does this affect the most? I mean, are children more susceptible or elderly more susceptible? Because with certain kinds of illnesses, I know that can be the case. What's the case with this?
If it's a chronic or acute, I mean, if this is one of those low levels of CO and they're exposed to it, an elderly couple is there, they're home 7 days a week, they're exposed to the lower levels, it may affect them more. Anybody that's got any pulmonary issues, it's going to affect them more, because the CO actually blocks the hemoglobin and the red blood cells, so there's no oxygen transfer to the red blood cells.
Okay.
So it's just like they're suffocating.
Okay. I was going to say, so it's like a suffocation in effect.
Yep. So it just slowly builds up. The CO slowly builds up in your bloodstream, and you just become less oxygenated as it goes on to where it becomes a severe.
And that causes some of that dizziness and nauseous feeling that you were talking
So
about.
it could be the elderly, it could be some child that's sick, it just depends on the population that's in there and their health.
Okay. Well, if you just joined us, we're talking to Pat Goodwin from the Charleston Fire Department about carbon monoxide. So, kind of to recap where we're at now, we've talked about, it's been around a long time. Detectors are very important, and if you're in doubt, you should always call the fire department. So let's talk a little bit about the timeline. I know you've said it can affect people anywhere from a day or two for up to many, many days. So what are kind of some of the things you would see, does it just take more time to get more sick with it, or is it something that can happen in large doses and quickly?
It all depends on the concentrations. If we are in that 30 to 100 range, it may take the 4 or 5 days. If it is say a furnace flue is completely blocked and is dumping all the CO in the house, and we're getting up to 400 to 500, 700 parts per million, we're talking death, unconscious within a few minutes.
Okay. So what would you recommend, to prevent things like this? What would you tell people to make sure is checked?
We have the first thing is check your detectors. I guess to make sure you have a detector. We go in a lot of residents that, they have the detectors. When do you check them? Does it have batteries? Well, I don't know. So we emphasize the checking of that. We'll give you batteries and detectors. This time of year, it's going to come up the heating system to have your flues checked. Birds are notorious for building nests in them. They've set all summer long. Now does the flue have rust holes in it? We've had instances that the flue went to a basement, to a crawl space, and at high levels, the kids got sick. We went and monitored. They didn't have a detector. We went in there, monitored, and found high levels of CO, found the flue had big rust holes in it.
Okay.
So have your heating appliances checked for this winter upcoming heating system or time.
Okay, so it's the kind of thing you'd probably want to do anyway, but this way is another way to protect you from carbon monoxide.
You do the
as
preventive
well.
maintenance to make sure your furnace doesn't quit in the winter.
Right.
But this is part of it that makes sure it's safe throughout the winter.
Okay, and what would you say about basements? Because a lot of people kind of associate carbon monoxide with basements. Is that because that's where most of the furnaces are?
If a person has a basement, 99% of the time the furnace and the water heater is in the basement. We've had some CO calls last week. It was like 3 times one residence, and it was the furnace and the air conditioner was in the basement.
Okay.
So basements are a great place for this appliance, and that's where a lot of issues come. So that's why we emphasize putting a CO detector on every floor, including the basement.
Okay.
Even if there's not a sleeping room there, still put one down there.
That's where those appliances are that could emit that. So,
Yes.
Okay. And so, when you take that call, say that residence that had the 3 calls, what is the recommendation after you've had a CO scare? You know what I mean? Do they need to get something checked immediately? Is there anything the fire department can do so that they can go in there and sleep that night? I mean, what is kind of that procedure like?
I guess it goes back to a lot of it depends on the concentrations. If we're in that 10 to 15 range, we make her in, just open some windows up. If we're getting the higher levels, our alarms, depends on the year, we may be able to say, A, shut your furnace or do not use your stove. We shut them off, shut the gas off, they cannot be operated. If that was a CO culprit, then that's been rectified until they get a service technician.
Okay.
If it's January and February and we got CO on level, we don't want to shut their house down and have them freeze up. So
Right.
we will put them somewhere else, either family, friends, the Red Cross has put people up before. Get them out in a residence, in a hotel, somewhere out of the house, but we'll leave the furnace on so things don't freeze up to where they can get a service tech in.
Until they can get someone to fix that.
If it becomes a big issue and we cannot do that, then we'll either shut the gas off or we'll call Ameren in, the gas company, and they'll red tag the meter and shut the whole house down.
Okay. So there are procedures following all that too.
Life safety is number one, and we've got different things we'll have to do to ensure the safety of the public.
Okay. And so we're heading into winter. We talked about that, a little bit with the carbon monoxide detectors, but what about fire? What are some things we need to do to protect our homes or be diligent about fire right now?
Same thing as CO, make sure you have these detectors. I would like to emphasize that it's law that you have to have a smoke detector and a CO detector. But if you rent, by law, the landlord has to provide you with a smoke detector and a CO detector. It is the tenant's responsibility to maintain them.
Okay, so they need to change the
So
batteries.
if the batteries are beeping, if the batteries are taken out, it's the tenant's responsibility, not the landlord. But the landlord, when you first move in, has to provide them.
Okay. And what you'd recommend probably getting to know those appliances too, right? Because I was talking before we came on air here about how I have one that's a combination unit. It has the smoke detector and the carbon monoxide detector in it, and it was going off one day and I didn't understand the sound, and it really just needed a battery, but I thought maybe it was an alarm. So is that something you'd recommend for people?
Yeah, there's a test button on there, and when you push the test button, it'll sound actually as if it was an alarm.
Okay.
We get numerous calls that the alarm's going off, and we get there and it's just a beeping for a battery. We're more than happy to check that. We better be safe than sorry on that.
Right. Okay. So we were talking, back to the fire. You said the tenants and everything. The landlord provides the units, and then they are responsible for the batteries. What's something else that we can do to protect our homes from fire, or be more diligent about fire precautions in the winter?
One is to get your heating appliances checked out. 2, it's just good common sense housekeeping. The water and the utility rooms around the water here and that is not a place for storage. And it's so easy to throw stuff in that closet or around the basement. But around those appliances, you should have at least 3 or 4 feet of clearance without anything. So if your furnace is in a closet, there really shouldn't be anything in the closet.
Right.
Make sure every house we do is recommended to have a fire extinguisher somewhere. Some place that you know where it's at, and some place that it's been checked and not, well, where is it? We always, here comes up Fire Prevention Week to make sure that people know how to get out of their house. This year's big thing on fire prevention is 2 ways out. So everybody should know 2 ways out of their residence,
Okay.
and practice that. Make sure your kids know it. Have that meeting place.
Is that the kind of thing? Have a fire drill at your house, just like you would at
We
school or in your
recommend
business?
next week or all year, but to have a fire drill, have that meeting place. That's one place everybody goes. But in the morning, push the test button on your smoke detector and see if your family knows how to get out, what to do. Or are they sleep into it, or are they scared and they hide, or whatever, but just have that say, kids, if this alarm goes off, you crawl out of bed, you feel the door, and you go out this way to exit to our meeting place, which would be the mailbox, the tree, wherever. But yeah, practice that. And if you practice that, when it comes to happen, the kid's that's gonna pull out a memory, this is what I need to do.
Okay.
And we know that because we've had fires in town where the kids were able to get out of the house from a fire because they said what they remember in schools when we went to talk to them.
Okay, that's
So it works. It
yeah. I was gonna
works.
say obviously that's something that works and something that you
But
can
so many
practice at
times
home.
people, they say, well, we need to do that, we need to check their detector, we need to have home drills, but they don't do it. Just do it. It takes 10 minutes, 15 minutes to have a plan where you're going to meet and practice.
Okay.
And it's common sense, and just protect your family.
What about two-level homes? Do you recommend some kind of rope ladder or something like that purchased for rooms that are harder to get out of, or?
You can, if the kids have ever used them before, as long as they have windows or the staircase. Really, if they have working smoke detectors throughout the residence, people know from cooking, such a small, minute piece of particles of smoke will set them off, that you should be able to get safely out any exits down the staircase.
Before it gets too out of
Before it gets
control.
out, if you have the working detectors.
Okay, and the plan, of course.
And the
so-
plan.
All right, so do you take a lot of common calls in the winter for one thing that starts a lot of fires in the winter? Is there anything that comes to mind, or a couple of things?
It's just all over the board of what different things. We do have a lot of issues with cigarettes.
Okay. So proper disposal there would be recommended, of course.
There's some people sleep in bed with cigarettes and they fall asleep. Cigarettes are notorious for having started several fires. Candles, this time of year, the holiday seasons, we'll have those candles burning. Just make sure there's some candles out there are not even meant to be burnt. They're
Right.
just there for the aesthetics and never meant to be burnt. So just make they're supposed to be burnt, and make sure they burn on a plate or a glass top or somewhere in non-combustible surface.
Something that the wax can't get to and ignite would make sense, so.
Paper tablecloths and stuff. Just use some common sense where you're putting these candles. We can all enjoy the candles and the sense of the candles, and this is the holiday season, and everybody's going to be burning a lot of candles. But just use common sense where we're lighting and placing these candles.
Yeah, it's just a consciousness thing. I think, a lot of times we're burning the candle and we just leave the house because we forget it's going. So maybe I've heard of people even going as far as putting a note, on the door that goes out that says, blow out the candles,
Yeah.
turn off the candle warmer, whatever it might be. So, maybe some tricks like that or something that people might be.
Because you never know what happens when you leave. We've had some curtains blowing, it's blowing in candles. You have pets.
That knock things over.
They get up on counters and things. So, candles are a safe tool or enjoyment when used properly.
Okay, well, you brought up pets a little bit. Is there anything that you'd recommend for pets in a fire? Should you have a plan for your pets as well? Of course, get the people out first.
This sounds crude. Get you and your family out. Animals will fend for themselves. They will usually find some place to get out, or they're going to hide. We don't want somebody to go back in for their pet.
Okay. Yeah, you hear that a lot. Don't go back.
Pets are a huge part of families, but if you're going to lose something, that would have to be over your brothers or sisters.
Sure.
So
Right.
we don't want to emphasize ever trying to rescue the pet. Take care of the family members first.
Okay, good advice there. I think a lot of people think, well, I'll just go back in and get them. Surely they'll come, but you're really putting your life at danger when you're doing that as well.
We want everybody to get out. We don't want anybody to go back for that. Again, fires should not, unless they're not home, get to that magnitude with proper detectors.
Okay, makes sense. Is there anything else you want to cover before we run out of time here about carbon monoxide or fires that people might need to know for this fall, winter?
If there's any questions at all, we'll be more than happy to come out and look at your detectors. We'll be more than happy to come out and go through a fire escape plan with you, help develop one.
Okay.
We'll even come out and help you, execute a drill. So if there's any questions at all, if your alarm is beeping and you're just unsure, or maybe if your alarm isn't beeping, but everybody's just not feeling well in this house today or this week, can you come out and check it? Give us a call. We'll be more than happy to come out and help you out.
It's kind of like anything else. You can go out and monitor. You'd rather find nothing than have somebody wait and not give you a call.
Yes, we've got the monitors. We're there. That's what we're there for, is public safety. We'll be more than happy to come out and help you in any way we can.
Okay, and the recommendation would always be to call 911 first, right? If they're,
Yes.
think
Call
they're in it.
911, give them the reason for the call, and they'll send the appropriate agency out, and we'll assist you.
Okay, well, Pat Goodwin from the Charleston Fire Department, we thank you for coming on Newswatch in Focus today.
Thank you.
We're about out of time for today, but we hope that you will stay tuned next for the Four Rivers Ag Report with Fred Peralta. You've been watching Newswatch in Focus. I'm your host, Kate Pleasant. Thanks for watching tonight. Thanks for tuning in to Newswatch in Focus. Is there a news story happening in your community? Let us know about it. You can email our newsroom at news@weiu.net. Call us at 581-2911 or write to us at 600 Lincoln Avenue, Charleston, Illinois 61920. Your story could be featured on Newswatch or right here on this show, Newswatch in Focus. For more news all the time, visit our website at weiu.net. Thanks for watching. Thanks for watching Newswatch in Focus. Did you know full episodes of our show are available on YouTube? Go to www.youtube.com/WEIUTV and click on the Newswatch in Focus playlist. Each week we'll put a new episode of Newswatch in Focus online. For more information and news, visit our website at weiu.net 24 hours a day.